A hint of sunlight peeking from the curtains, like a child playing hide and seek, half-heartedly hiding, yet secretly wanting to be found. Soon enough, the alarm clock goes off. Out of bed, curtains completely drawn, bathing the whole room with the full glory of the sun. A brand new day to be alive. A day to not sleep in. A day to go outdoors. A day to have a trip to the waterfall.
That was probably how the day started for everyone in the church youth group who joined the trip. It was raining the night before, but the next day it was all bright and sunny, removing any doubts about going ahead with the plan. After all, the guide for the trip, who was the father of one of the youth members, assured everyone it was going to be an easy hike. So everyone was looking forward to it. Everyone but me. It was my final year of high school, and with a big exam coming up, my mom made me stay home to study. So I missed out on that day. Missed out on all the conversations during the bus ride, missed out on all the jokes and laughter, and whatever funny thing that may have happened on the way there. Missed out on that 2-hour hike. And it was a tough hike, which included crossing 7 rivers that were about waist deep. It was pretty challenging, so much for it being an easy hike. When they finally got to the waterfall, everyone was tired, so they settled down, ready to have lunch. Sounds like a typical day out in nature with a group of friends, right? Well, wrong. Because that day, some of our lives changed dramatically. Like mine. I was at home studying when I heard an urgent knock on my room door. I opened the door and I saw my mom's face, and I knew something was horribly wrong. Something really bad had happened at the waterfall. A few of them had drowned. I was stunned for a moment. Then we quickly organized ourselves and headed over there. I remember the whole time in the car on the way there, I was just praying and asking God, please don't let that be true. That they almost drowned but managed to get out of the water somehow. We arrived at the local police station and everyone there was just crying or in a state of shock. There were so many questions. How many people drowned? Did anyone try to help them? How did it even happen in the first place? At this point, all I knew was 5 of them went into the water and none of them came out. And out of the 5, 3 of them were youths. And their names were Mervyn, Micah, and Kayan. It was the first time in my life that I experienced death so close. It seemed like everything just turned dark. And it was twice as hard for me. You see, Mervyn was my best friend. Kayan was my youngest brother. And I lost both of them that same day, 22 years ago. Death, the great equalizer. Everything and everyone dies at some point. Some at a ripe old age. Some gone before having really lived. Death is the one sure thing in life. But what is death exactly? What does it mean to pass away? From a physiological standpoint, in very simplified terms, when you stop breathing, when your heart stops beating, and when your brain function is totally gone, and when all these conditions are permanent and irreversible, you are dead. Now that's not really complicated. What's more complicated is a question that I'm sure we've all asked at some point. What happens after we die?
What happens after we die? Do we cease to exist, or is there something beyond our last breath? Do our souls live on in a different dimension? Do souls even exist? There are different answers, of course, depending on your beliefs. But generally speaking, there are 2 ways to think about it. First, death is the conclusion of our existence. Secondly, death is merely a transition to a different realm of existence. If you believe that death is the conclusion of it all, when your physical body dies, your consciousness, the real you, is permanently gone from existence as well. What is known as the afterlife does not exist. So since death equals the end, there's really not much to discuss here. That's it. Game over. However, if you believe that death is not the end of it all, it means you believe that it is merely a transition to a certain kind of existence beyond the grave. Now, even then, there are two broad popular views of what happens here. One is that the afterlife takes place in a spiritual realm where your spirit, soul, or stream of consciousness ends up in one of two places, the good or the bad one, generally known as heaven or hell, and where you end up usually depends on how you've lived your life. In the other widely held view, a person who dies may be reborn into this world and begin the life circle all over again, usually with no memory of their past life. This is known as reincarnation, and some would believe that the reincarnation cycle goes on until one is released from it by reaching a certain spiritual state that some would call nirvana.
Whatever beliefs we may have about death, death is central to life. As author Haruki Murakami puts it, death is not the opposite of life, but an innate part of it. By living our lives, we nurture death. We may differ on our viewpoints on death, but we can all agree that you and I, we will certainly die someday. What is uncertain is the question of when, where, and how. And that's a good thing. Can you imagine living your whole life knowing the details of your death? How will that weigh on you? Well, one man knew what that was like.
The atmosphere was intense that night at the garden called Gethsemane. Jesus was there praying with his disciples. Just hours earlier, they had one last supper together. That was to be the final night Jesus was alive. From the very beginning, Jesus knew when and how he was going to die. He knew how it was all going to play out. Imagine living your whole life anticipating this moment. It caused Jesus such psychological distress that he sweat drops of blood while praying. And it wasn't metaphorical. Severe anxiety can cause blood capillaries to break down in sweat glands, resulting in blood-tinged sweat, a known medical condition called hematidrosis. Soon after midnight, Jesus was betrayed by Judas, one of his 12 disciples, and handed over to the Jewish religious leaders who have been scheming all along to get him. Although there was no basis for a charge against him, the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate, gave in to the Jewish people's wish for Jesus to be crucified. And so began the torture that Jesus endured leading up to the cross. 39 lashes of the whip on his bare back. Metal balls woven into the leather whip would bruise him, and pieces of sharp bones attached would tear deep into his back muscles, tearing so deep that parts of his spine would have been exposed and his bleeding flesh left hanging like ribbons. This kind of flogging was so brutal that it killed some people even before the crucifixion. To top it off, the Roman soldiers fashioned a crown of thorns and pressed it hard onto the head of Jesus, mocking him as the King of the Jews. At the cross, he was held on to the wooden beams with sharp iron spikes 5 to 7 inches long pounded through his wrists and feet.
That was the day now known as Good Friday. But at that time, 2,000 years ago, it seemed far from good. Jesus' body all broken, with severe bleeding inside and out, vital organs malfunctioning, lungs collapsed. He struggled to even just breathe. And with his dying breaths, he pleaded with God for mercy. Mercy not for himself, but for those who put him up there to die. He pleaded with God, saying, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." And in between desperate gasps for air, you can sense the brokenness that went beyond the body into the heart when he cried, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Portraying the kind of anguish that shows that no matter how intense the pain of physical death, it pales in comparison to the pain of separation from his Father. The greatest pain in death is not when body is separated from spirit, but when we are separated from the ones we love most.
For better or for worse, in sickness and in health, I never thought I would have to fulfill this vow so soon.
Great is your love. Oh, how great is your love. Oh, how great is your love. Forever we sing. Great is your love. Oh, how great is your love. Oh, how great is your love. Forever we sing. Great is your love. Oh, how great is your love. Oh, how great is your love. Forever we sing. Great is your love. Oh, how great is your love. Oh, how great is your love. Love is patient and kind. When there's love, there's no envy, no pride. It's not easily angered, so selflessly you have shown the way to live. Oh, my heart is content with the love for my Savior, my Father, my friend. Oh, in you I abide like the heart of my Savior. I long to have faith, hope, love you have shown, and the greatest of all is love. Faith, hope, love you have shown, and the greatest of all is love. Faith, hope, love you have shown, and the greatest of all is love.